So if anybody's got any questions for any one of our panelists, please. Okay, we've got Brother Nat.
Thank you, Sister Una, and greetings, everyone. I don't know.
Hello again.
It's been a while, and apologies for my absence.
That's okay.
Just to all the panelists, really, and I do this as because I'm a bank staff member for the Southwest London St George's Mental Health Trust, and yeah, I'm based down in the smog, which is London. So as I spent almost close to 15 years in the trust, so and I left about 2 years ago because I came to my senses of realizing I can do so much more for my community outside of an establishment that predominantly harms my community, the NHS. So as I'm kind of leaving and kind of exiting out there, but I'm still a bank staff member, one of the last projects I'd done was producing a BAME lanyard. The term we can have a debate about, but the BME, because you know the LGBTQ have really gone to heights with their own lanyard. I've got one here. But basically, my question, whenever I hand these out to the staff at the NHS, particularly my sisters and brothers, I simply say to them, if I was to offer you, and this is to the panelists or to anyone, if I was to offer you double your wages, half of your responsibility, and no overt, covert, systemic, structural, emotional racism, what would you say to that job? Would you be interested in that job? So that's kind of the first part. And then thereafter, normally I'll get, well, yes, but perplexed, like, what do you mean? Double my wages and half my responsibility and no racism. What do you mean? And I say, well, we're building the African NHS over here. Yeah, we're building our own. Would you be interested? Well, furthermore, you can grab a brick and help build it. Or, you know, when it's ready, would you be interested in joining? And so that's kind of the question I put to the esteemed panelists. It was really informative, comprehensive, and yeah, we are. I mean, normally we'd say, oh, we need to start building. It's happening. It is happening. It's about being in the know. And I understand I missed it, but you had Brother Dean Okai on?
No, next week. Next week.
Oh, thank goodness. Right. So with that said, I recommend everyone to be here because it's about doing for self. If you want to fight the establishment that has caused so much harm and etc., then by all means. But I strongly advocate nation building.
And internet connections will have to be one of the third or fourth things we work on, because it looks as though we've lost Nat's next words. We'll come back to him. Is that okay, Una?
Yeah, that's fine. Johnny was before Carl, so yeah, and then Carl and Liz and then Joy. Okay, Johnny?
Evening to everybody. I'm just sorry that I'm the bearer of bad news, because all of the guest speakers have spoken so well. You know, it's been well accepted by all, but most of the blame is on ourselves, because what I know of our community, especially the older community, not the young one, that we never talks. A West Indian, an old West Indian will never ask for help. They'll be dying and they will never tell anybody. They will be broke and they won't tell anybody. And so most of them even pretend to be mad, as we used to use the word. So the proof of the pudding is in ourselves. How can we get people to change and to express what's happening to them? Because we don't do. And you look around and most people, you know, they'll die, and when they die, you hear 6 months or a year after what illness they have, which if they'd spoke about it earlier, they could have gone and get help. And that is our biggest problem. I think the younger generation might be different, but I know for sure that's how the older generation talks. So we must get to them. And it's just a comment.
Yeah, no, that's a really great comment. And I feel that one of the ways that we can deal with that, it has to always start with the relationship with ourselves. Because when a person gets to a place where they don't seek help, there are many factors. A lot of the time it's because they're in denial. And in some cases, it's to do with shame. They are ashamed of what people think. And I think it's a big thing. I think I don't think it's a cultural thing. I think it's a human thing. Sometimes we're too fixated on what other people think. And a lot of the time, nobody actually really cares. Everybody's got their own problems, you know. So it's about just being real with yourself, because there's one thing when we lie to other people, but when we're lying to ourselves, and we've all done it, then we are a danger to ourselves. It's about being real with ourselves. So the answer to your question is about having that relationship with ourselves and being true to ourselves, because we can't be true to other people if we're not true to ourselves.
But it doesn't happen to most European people. It's mostly the Africans that it happens to, who denies talking what is happening, how they feel, what position they're in, what condition they're in. I know that's my own observation. It might not be true, but that's my observation.
No, I agree. I do agree with what you're saying, but I think in some cases as well, it's to do with sort of cultural reasons or a learned behavior. You know, like for example, in certain cultures, people don't talk about their feelings or problems. They just sweep everything under the carpet. You know, you don't talk about anything that's bothering you. Sometimes children are seen and not heard. You know, like I know, like culturally, in my culture when I was growing up, is I guess the way or the pattern of that generation was like children are seen and not heard. So it's like you don't have a voice. You know, so say for example, you may have a child that becomes very or an adult that becomes very angry, and it's not because they're crazy, it's because they haven't been heard. Because when a child has not been heard, it kind of triggers issues with anger. You know, so I think it's about ensuring that we hear children. So even us now, as the older generation, what we can do is to ensure that we hear, you know, the younger generation, that we hear them, what they've got to say, how they're feeling. So we can make that change as well by helping the younger generation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I hope I answered the question as well, Johnny, and I appreciate what you were saying. Carl, do you want to, I think you're unmuted already, so I think you were next.
Yeah. Could you hear me? Good afternoon.
Loud and clear, yeah.
Good afternoon, good afternoon.
Good to see you again.
This topic is actually a good platform, and I think it brings out a lot of awareness in terms of mental health. My question is to you, Kate. Do you think that within the Black culture that the older heads interpret mental health differently in terms of when they talk about mental health, they always figure that madness is, you know, one of the key factors. And the fact is, because what I've come across is that the fact is that GPs also find it a little bit difficult to refer Black individuals when they identify that they have a mental problem. But the individual themselves, they deny, that they be in denial that they have that particular symptoms, right? And they tend to find it difficult to refer them to institutions and so forth, because the first thing that normally happens is that they say to themselves, well, I'm not mad, not really trying to interpret the different categories of mental illness, right? So do you think or find that in your practice that that type of interpretation comes across from the Black community?
Oh, sorry.
Asking Kate, does she think that the fact is in terms of Black awareness, in terms of the mental health, that they interpret mental health differently?
Yeah, I think many years ago, it was interpreted as madness, but that's not the case now. To say, for example, as human beings, we need positive stress. So positive stress is equivalent to I'm going to use a car analogy. So positive stress is equivalent to first and second gear. And then obviously when we're experiencing negative stress, then we're at third gear. So when we're operating at a place where, where our bodies is producing more negative stress hormones, then it becomes the norm. So even when we're not stressed, our brain is saying, okay, why are you not stressed? So we create more stress. So when we go above third to fourth gear, then what happens is that we become anxious, So when we go above fourth gear, going on to fifth gear, people experience depression. So in some cases, it can actually stem from stress. So how can that be linked to madness? I don't understand. Does that make sense? So that's what I'm trying to case now.
Yeah, what I'm trying to bring towards you and I is professionals, right? And the fact is, we'll understand those terminology that is used from the average person, right, who probably is not aware, right, of these symptoms and how they present themselves on the body, right, will always feel that the fact is mental health is madness. So the awareness of our community and how we bring across that type of education, right, is one that is valid to how we community understand the effect of mental health, right? So taking all what you say from the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, we might understand that. But is the man on the street actually understand that the same way? And how do we get that awareness drive to be able to alert them of how to identify these factors?
Yeah, I think it has to start from the education system. So, for example, my daughter, she's 5, and they have what's it called? They have a subject called PHSE, and they talk about mental health. They talk about feelings, emotions. So when she was in reception, they literally sort of asked them, okay, what emotion are you feeling according to a color? So anger equals red. Yellow equals happy. So it's about trying to educate children at an early age so it becomes normalized as opposed to something that is like a taboo, that is associated with madness. I think it has to start from the education system at an early age.
All right. I've got a next question there for Kash. In terms of your experience in the NHS, now,
sorry, can I just say, I don't work in the NHS. I work in the voluntary sector. All
right. So in general, they come under the same head anyway.
Okay.
Now, there are legislative documents, right, that actually have the process of mental health, right? In terms of different authority, they have what you can call a white paper that has been printed out of the actual strategy, right? I think it was up to 2023 or something like that, right?
I think you're talking about the review of the Mental Health Act.
Yeah.
Okay.
In terms of how they deal, right, with that process. Now, what we see used to happen before is that the fact is, referencing to Huddersfield, we had Stores Hall and we had St. Luke's that used to deal with people with mental health. Right? Local authority close all that down and they move that services to the hospital, right? Now, when you cut back on those type of services, you realize that the fact is that we have people on the street now who fall into the category of not identifying that mental faculties that actually they are faced with, right? And even in terms of treatment that they used to get every day and be more or less stable, they don't get that now. So the fact is, some of the individuals who actually is under care and depends on where they live, they might be out of the medication for a couple of weeks, right? So these services that supposed to be enhancing and looking after mental health patients isn't actually effective right now, because we see that in terms of support, in terms of financial support, in terms of organization who look after these areas isn't there. And also too, we are in lack of psychologists, right, in the Black Hemisphere in terms of dealing with our problems. So from your perspective is that we also see that there are some components that are missing. And I will say this in terms of proverbs, as they want to say. You have a black cat and a white cat, right? The job of that black cat and that white cat is to catch mouse, right? Now, if they cannot catch the mouse, they're not doing their job. So if you look at the economy that we have right now, right, and we actually look at the political and economic structure that exists, we are in a dire strait in terms of the support that's supposed to be there to support mental health. Now, I know the government is doing a lot along that line, but whether or not that is in place, I can't say right now. But
I'm gonna interrupt you only to bring other people in, Carl, unless you want to ask a direct question.
Well, there are direct questions in terms of my way of, the philosophical approach to how I actually put question forward. Is looking at the whole structure, because even right now we have a vision for the Pan-African diaspora, and the same thing is happening. We see that the healthcare service isn't there because the fact is that part of the economy of ownership, right, doesn't exist. And the fact is when you doesn't have anything in terms of fixed asset or in general, then long term, our people will continue to suffer all the time because the white supremacy structure has designed it in that way. And the fact is we could be always wanting, right? And if you doesn't have assets, then you can't build a favorable economy and a structure that will maintain our healthcare. That's my take.
It's a good take, and I'm sure we'll discuss it further after the 10 o'clock after our session, Carl. But I can see two hands are up and Brother Nat's come back in the room as well. So I'll keep things in order and we'll go with Liz and then Chris and then Brother Nat. So Liz, if you can unmute yourself, please, but if you can be brief, because I think we've got 8 minutes to get through 3 definite questions.
So thank you very much to the panel. I'm glad Brother Nat's back because he's taught me a lot as well about, what we rely on is the health service. We've put it at the top of our, we've come here to form the health service and we should be relying on the health service, and the health service should have the answers for us, but it really hasn't. And the one thing that shocked me was the maternity deaths. Even I didn't know that, knowing what the experience I had as in both my labours, and they were both in King's College Hospital, which is in the middle of London, and both my midwives were Black women, and both of them I'd actually worked with. And they're not them personally, but the team around them was so negative towards me. And and the same when I was in hospital more recently, is that it was the Black nurses that were so negative towards me. And but my point, the question I've got is that I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression after work because of toxicity at work. And the last job I did, I did the thing that my mum told me never to do, was don't let people know your business. So I told them my business. I fessed up at the interview or at the beginning, I have these disabilities, including anxiety and depression. And I think that was the worst thing I could have done. Not that it was wrong, but they were so petrified of me, like I was going to kill somebody. So I'm in the situation then that I left that job I had to leave that job because they didn't take my mental health into consideration. And I'm going through a personal injury claim. And my friends, my actual true friends that worked with me, they're all saying to me, let it go, Liz, move on, let it go. And I feel that letting it go means that they won't look at the way they treated me if I came there with a wheelchair and they did what they did, it'd be like pushing me down the stairs. And I said, I've got a wheelchair, do you mind helping me up the stairs? So for all three of our panelists, where is the letting go, and where is the phrase that was given to me was picking at the wound, that I'm picking at the wound by continuing to go over the trauma that I've been through. And I just want to know, free advice, should I keep going? It's a big question, I'm only joking. I'm just, how much, when we get to the stage where we open up and let your left hand know what your right hand's doing, and, and don't keep quiet about everything, it's not always accepted. But I'm 100% with Brother Nat on the let's work towards our own self-support, our own self-care within our community. And
I'm sure we're definitely going to speak about that after 10 o'clock, but thanks for the question, Liz. And as I said, we are short of time, but if Adriana, Kate or Cashin have got a view on the benefits of opening up, if I've framed that right, Liz, is that, yeah, and when to address that and maybe close up as well. I see Adriana's indicating, go ahead.
Okay. Chris has got his hand up, sorry. Chris is an American brother. He's had his hand up for a while.
Do you want to answer all three questions then? We'll let the questions go and then people can answer, the panel can answer. Yeah. Thanks, Adriana.
I must say I want to thank all of you three guests for all good stories and presentation. They seem to have interest me. Thank you to all the three special guests.
Thank you, Chris. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Okay, and Abdul, good to see you again.
Yes. Brother Cashin, are you a mental? Did you say you're a mental health? You work in the mental health? Did you say?
I do. I run services in the community.
Yeah. No, what you were saying about patients. Black people are the most diagnosed with schizophrenia or whatever, and the thing is, right, with medication as well. I mean, as it says, medication it could also be detrimental as well to the health of the patient, of the person who's been diagnosed. Because with experience, I know medication has actually, irreparably damaged, me and also other people as well, And as it says, it could be very detrimental, where you could take your life, plain and simple. You could take your life because of the side effects of the drug they are giving you. Because it is so unbearable, it is so painful, it debilitates you so much. You can't look after yourself. You can't comb your hair. You can't brush your teeth. The basic hygiene you can't do. It's impossible because of the side effects. You see. So as it says, when people die in these kind of environments, they brush it aside, saying it's people's mental health or whatever. When in fact it could be the drug they're giving you. You see. But it's brushed under the carpet. It's brushed under the table. You see? Because So so that's what I'm saying to you. So do you feel that drug medication they give you, certain medications, they give you, could actually say put you in that kind of mindset where you could take an overdose. You can actually commit suicide, in fact.
So I appreciate these are all sensitive topics that we're discussing tonight as well. So if anyone does feel as though they've got issues that they want to address outside of this space, by all means reach out to us, email us. As we've said, there's phone lines that are available as well, the Samaritans and others. And if you want to private message myself or Una, we will put something in the chat as well that directs you towards the Samaritans. But yeah, if you can answer the question there, Cashin, about medication and the side effects as opposed to talking therapy.
Yeah, one of the things that it wouldn't be appropriate for me to do is to give advice on medication. That just wouldn't be appropriate. But Abdul, I do want to to widen the discussion and just say a couple of things. One is that I'd said in my presentation that I rarely find Black people who have a diagnosis of depression. It's very rare. The majority of people don't. Personality disorders, it's a range of different, more psychotic disorders typically. However, there was some really good research done by Professor James Nazaru. I think he's at the University of Central Lancaster now. And the thing that I found really interesting about his work, he did quite a lot of, I think this is about 10 years ago now, he did a survey of, he was looking at medical notes for a lot of Black people who actually had gone through the psychiatric system or were currently in the psychiatric system. And he proposed that by looking at the notes, he felt there was a large amount of particularly Black men who were inappropriately diagnosed as having a psychotic illness, whereas it should have actually been a depression. And the thing that is interesting for me about that, if you think about the conditions that people live in, the way that, particularly if you're living in the society and you're living under conditions of racism and oppression, a diagnosis of depression would actually be a better fit. Mm-hmm. Because if you have a diagnosis of depression, it's a very different treatment pathway you go through compared to if you're diagnosed as having a psychotic illness. So you would often think that there would often be more of a willingness to have an element of talking therapy in your treatment plan if it's a diagnosis of depression. If it's a diagnosis of a psychosis, which means, it's colloquial, being out of touch with reality, a therapeutic intervention doesn't bring you back in touch with that reality, because there is a break in reality, and you have to have the ability for reflection and insight in order for a therapeutic offer to actually be useful. So whilst I can't say very much about appropriateness of medication, I can see how people having a combination of emotional support, therapeutic interventions, and medication for stabilization of mood can be helpful. But often, and the evidence says that rarely do Black people get the offer of a therapeutic intervention, and that usually means that they get psychotropic medication as the offer.
Thanks, Shane.
I wanted to also, because Carl asked a number of questions, which, Carl, you'll have to forgive me because I didn't get all of them. But you asked about the closure of the psychiatric hospitals. I can't really comment on Storsol because I don't know the decisions behind that, but that has been, that closure and those types of closure have actually been in the system for quite some time, as there was a policy attempt to move away from larger psychiatric institutions to treatment in the community. A lot of that didn't work well. It wasn't appropriately funded and didn't particularly work well. But you also mentioned this whole idea of whether or not people have an acceptance of illness. And that's a really difficult one, because if there is a percentage of our people that are inappropriately diagnosed, then there will be some people that actually were, in being themselves, appropriately responding to the effects of racism, the effects of being treated unfairly, were then labeled as mad, as opposed to people who are actually in trauma. So I think so I always hold diagnoses very lightly, because it's more important for me that actually you understand what the lived experience of the person is, to really be able to walk alongside them, show them some compassion, and also encourage them in terms of getting back to themselves, getting back to their community, and actually fulfilling the purpose for which they were born here in this life. So I think the diagnosis thing, and whether or not somebody accepts illness or not, can be a real red herring, because especially as often our system of understanding mental illness is based on a concept of psychiatric, it's collective sanity. So, sorry, democratic sanity. So if most people are doing it, then that's sanity. And then you are looking for the outliers. So if us as a people, we have a different view of the world, a different way of being in the world, are responding to things differently, it's very easy for us to be identified as being outside of the norm and therefore likely to be mentally unwell or mad. And I think that so I'm trying to just pick up a lot of what you were saying very quickly, because I know that we're running out of time.
Okay.
Thanks, Cashin. And I think Brother Nat, and then I may ask the last question unless others want to raise their hands now, because I know we're running well over time. Apologies to the guest speakers, but Brother Nat, if you can unmute yourself, you got cut off mid-question. Brilliant.
Oh, I did, yeah. Apologies about that. Oh, gosh. Okay. Yeah, and just timely as well. It was just a yes or no response, really. So as I was saying, as I put the lanyard over my colleague, and they're looking at their nice BHM lanyard, and they're, oh, this is amazing. I feel valued, and look at me, it's great. I put directly to them, you know, as what comes from my ancestors, Marcus Messiah Garvey, Kwame Nkrumah, Thomas Sankara. If we think about our ancestors, and what they always talk about is self-determination. The idea of having to rely on another race to have your best interests at heart is a bit, you know, nonsensical. But we move. And one thing which Liz was touching on as well, Sister Liz, you know, it's not that I'm anti-establishment. It's that I know that we will make far more greater inroads if we use the logical method of looking after ourselves. You know, our house was destroyed, they came, they raped, they pillaged, they stole, they robbed, you know, so best we just repair. So I put the question to the panelists and anyone else that would like to be on that type of movement, which is, if we double your wages, if we half your responsibility, and there's no racism, what would you say to that? Would you be interested in that job? Would you be interested in building that type of institution or system or structure, which is going on as we speak, as you'll find out with Brother Dean from Next Strong End? Just a yes or no, really. And if you want to add on to that. So yeah.
My answer is yes. I'm jumping in quickly. And my answer is yes, you wouldn't have to double my wages, and I've been involved in doing that for the past 20 years. I think my experience has taught me that actually the ability to determine how we define health and well-being for ourselves is critically important. And I would agree with you in terms of allowing other people to define what a healthy Black person, a healthy Black psyche looks like. I think that it's folly to assume that other people are motivated in the same way. So I think it's absolutely important that we develop systems and processes for ourselves. And actually, it's, you know, you can earn more money elsewhere, but actually it's a better thing. It gives me a level of nourishment that I don't get from working in the statutory sector.
Absolutely. It's ironic. This is a group called the Pursuit of Happiness, and the only thing that gazumped happiness for me is joy, because I see happiness as a moment, whereas joy is kind of more permanent. But it's that the greatest happiness is serving, for me personally, is serving our people. But even more than that is serving life, and even more than that is serving the higher power, the Most High, God, Allah, whatever you want to call. So it's encouraging to hear that. And as I was saying, because I know there are other panelists in the time, but it's that I'm not against the establishments. I'm a bank staff member for the NHS. I'm part of the Wandsworth Stop and Search Community Monitoring Team. I still work on projects within the trust. It's just that I like to make sure I have my fingers kind of spread out, and you know. So yeah, to the sisters, to the queens, no pressure. If you say no, it's fine.
Well, I think that actually you know, we have chosen, I think, to work in either private practice or outside of the mainstream. I mean, I don't want to speak for anyone else, but it seems like all three of us have. So, and certainly I am very interested in racism, working out what that is, and also trying to respond to the real needs. Actually, the funny thing is that racism hurts everybody. Yeah. Oh, sure it does. I noticed in the chat someone was talking about white fragility, and people talk about white fragility as if somehow it was a blessing, but I can tell you it's a curse. You know, not being able to have a serious conversation. Really? That is not a good thing in no way, in no one's life. So so, but I definitely have a real love for the community, and I'm definitely invested.
I think the same question for Kate, Ben.
Yes, I guess for myself, I would say yes as well. But I think for me, I'm at a place where I accept that racism does exist, you know, but at the same time, it doesn't define who I am as a person, you know, and I feel that just because we've heard that we're not good enough, or we heard that we won't go so far, that's someone else's perspective. Does that make sense? And it's important for us to believe in ourselves and educate the youth to believe in themselves, to go for what they want in life, but still be aware, you know, that racism, it does actually exist. One of the reasons why I work for myself is because I don't have to deal with all that. I have experienced that, you know, I have experienced it. I remember there's a time I had a referral. Obviously with the referral, they don't pick me, they come to me, and I guess with my name, you can't sort of determine whether I'm black or white. So you just get that look, it's like, oh, she's black. And they're a bit disappointed, but that's not you know what I mean? That's not really my problem. But I think it's just important to recognize that, yes, people may say what they want to say about us, but it doesn't determine our destiny, it doesn't determine who we are. We have to go for what we want. And for me, I'm very passionate about training our children, you know, to build their self-esteem and going for what they want. You know, yes, we're different, but doesn't mean that sometimes different can actually work for you. You know, being different, it can work for you rather than work against you, you know. So yes, it's all about the mindset, really.
Hopefully that answers Brother Nat's question. I think he's left the room again as well. So, but we'll.
And I'd like to say, thank you so much, Kate, Cash, and Adriana. It's been absolutely amazing this evening. I knew it would be. We've explained already. You know, it's a topic that is very close to our heart, and something that we obviously cover throughout our journey as well on this platform. You know, it's a big part of our platform, so we'd love to have you all back. Definitely, you know, I think it's important that we share what we've got, and you know, and try and improve things for our community.
Thanks again.
Could I say something?
We've got to let them go, Carl, because they've been here for hours now. So we need to let the panelists go. It isn't
just a short one. Just a short one. It's a short one.
If it's brief, then Carl.
Yeah, regardless of what ideology or concept is put in place, you got to remember one thing: it must be sustainable, and you must have the infrastructure in place that allow that to happen. So it's easy for me to, you know, try to, you know, put a philosophy forward. But the fact is, you got to remember one thing, that we are dealing with an existing white supremacy, right? And because we are existing with that, we have to find an economy that actually generate that type of, you know, building block to be able to do what we have to do. Thank you.
Thanks, Carl.
Thanks, Carl.
We understand if you need to leave now, guest speakers, but you're more than welcome to stay if you do want to, even if it's with camera off and you might mute. We have an after hours session now So yeah, by all means, we really do appreciate the effort you've put in, and we're really glad that you came, and hope to speak to you all again in the future. Abdul, I'm sorry you couldn't ask your question, but who knows?
And do email us as well, like we advised in the week. So yeah, we'll await your email. Okay.
Yeah, thanks to the panel.
Thank you, guys. Speak soon.
Thank you.
Uncle Hash, this
and the little one.
Tash.
Yes.
Thank you again.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm going to stick around for another quarter now.
Brilliant. Before Abdul asks his question, and sorry, Abdul, I did want to jump the gun earlier.
Can I just answer Liz's question? Because
absolutely.
Liz asked when to open up, and I think that is just such a brilliant question, to be honest, because I suggested that talking to people, although I suggested talking to people and on a kind of helpline situation or in a kind of focusing partnership, and I think that perhaps that could suggest that we can just open up generally, and so I think it's great that Liz drew attention to this idea about when you can and can't speak, because it's really a big one, and this is one that it really comes up. It really comes up wherever you talk about services, and it certainly really comes up on the helpline. I was working on a rape and sexual abuse support helpline, and who do you talk to, particularly if you're a victim of rape and sexual abuse, that actually often abusers are magnetically drawn to people who have already been victims of this same abuse. So who you open up to, again, it rises to the top as such an important question. So I want to thank you, Liz, for saying that. Of course, the answer is always going to be highly unique. So, what I can't do is I can't tell you the answer for you. But I can draw attention to certain things. So, first of all, to understand why it is you need to say something, because if it's a compulsion, and it's this might be a part of some sort of levels of anxiety, and the compulsion or might not have the intention of actually resolving issue. So it's important to understand, if I'm actually in a state of anxiety right now, then actually to go to someone who is in a professional situation, if that's why I'm wanting to speak. But if you want to, actually what you want to do is you open up because you want to draw in people from your close circle and be with them in a place of intimate understanding about what's happening for you. Then I would suggest, and again, my advice is never as good as your own feeling, your own gut feeling. No one outside can replace your own, and no one either can learn a lesson that you yourself need to learn. But I would say, listen to that person beforehand and see what they say about other people. Give them a good listen. Because often if you can hear them bad-mouthing somebody else or telling somebody else's secrets, that's exactly what they're going to do for you.
That's so true.
And the tone, listen to their tone. So first of all, you have to know how they speak about others. And also then it's just like, how much do I have for this person? How much can I reach out? So then also see how much they are willing to say, how much they are willing to open up. Because if they are not willing to open up nothing, then actually you could be in a situation where you'll give everything and they will give nothing back. And that's that might work okay for some little thing. But if you really open up your heart to somebody, you can go, one part of you can want to open up, and the other parts of you can go straight into shame, where you feel totally exposed. So you've got to, and that would be that would be my last idea on the subject. Perhaps Cash can also say something, I don't know, but listen to them, and try and work towards a reciprocal intimacy or mutuality, and what you're working towards every time is safety.
I wouldn't add anything to that. I think you've really outlined that very clearly, Adriana.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So before Liz comes in, sorry Liz if you wanted to respond, but I've been sitting on this one since 8 o'clock and I wanted to try and get into the any questions space. So some of the stuff that we're pre-programmed with from birth or from generations, we've got natural phobias or understandable fears of snakes, spiders, rats in my case. All 3 of them are on the never go near list. But so those type of things are there to protect us from natural predators. Is there anything that slavery has done to the black population that makes us naturally phobic to things? Is there a natural phobia or dislike of things, and is it visible in the black community today?
I don't think so.
Is it irrational? Because what I'm describing there, the fear of rats and mice and snakes, it's a rational fear because those things are harmful to us. But when you look in the black community, there's so many habits that are repeated, no matter whether you're African, Caribbean, or born in this country, that we seem to repeat. So whether it's that self-destructive nature or that inability to make progress in the way that we should be doing. Is it something that's been?
Something here, Mark?
Certainly can. Yeah, I was waffling. So.
From something from my own experience.
Mm.
I had a really, what I consider to be an irrational fear of people who like country music, and
not irrational.
I really did, but I went through the focusing because it's so introspective and reflective. I realized that actually that what I had done was to have some sort of intuitive idea that actually these kinds of people were notoriously right-wing, and I had dispossessed their right-wing tendencies. Not all of them are, but some of them are. I mean, not all of them are, but I dispossessed them from the right-wing tendency and had used this visual trigger to, and I hadn't, so I'd taken the fear out of it, and I just saw them as a visual trigger, and I just thought, I don't like country music, and I don't like people who are like that. And what I was doing was, I realized, was protecting myself against people who I felt were right-wing. So I think that actually people do, but like me, they might have taken away the material from the stimulus and just be left with the stimulus and not really understand why.
I think that's a really good example, because I think that, it sounds to me that's your brain, your amygdala, your fast thinking brain, who's actually just reacting to something because of an association. So mine would be, growing up in Huddersfield, if I saw white boys with Doc Martens and closely cropped hair. Now, that doesn't, because it happens at a level, it's your brain making an association and then looking to protect you so that you don't have to think about it, because actually a lot of the time that was the experience that we had at school. You keep away from them because you know that they'll be trying to give you a kick in or something. So I think that there are things that we do associate out of self-protection that have been translated through generations. I know that one of the things, I have an American cousin who was talking about the fear of German Shepherd dogs. Why? Because the association and civil rights movements of those were the dog that they set on black people. Now, that's not that German Shepherd dogs are bad things, but it's this association that is often taken into your psyche at a very deep level that you don't think rationally about this because you don't have the time. You don't have time to sort of think, I wonder if this is a good German Shepherd or not, that sort of thing. So I think that's in a sense, it's just really understanding how our brains work and how they make decisions really quickly in order to protect us, but they do that through association, and some of the associations are not valid. So you actually need your slow thinking brain to rationally use your ability to think through from experience and to balance the fast thinking part of your brain.
Yeah. So we shouldn't avoid being in a white, exclusively white area. We shouldn't avoid going into a room or a meeting if there's only white people there. You shouldn't think this isn't the space for me or the place for me. You belong there just as much as everybody else. It's just that irrational thought that's going through your brain that you don't belong, which prevents us from making any progress. I know Johnny'd call it brainwashing, but it is the same thing. If you're excluding yourself because you're black, then
I understand that, but this comes from somewhere. So it's not come from nowhere. It's come from, there are certain places we're not safe. So it's actually, you can't simply say, well, actually, I should be able to go anywhere, and I'm going to walk into the headquarters of the BNP on a Friday night and sort of say, I've got a right to be here. There has to be this balance between being, understanding that we do have a particular history and an experience of people who actually, many of them are out to harm us, or to ensure that we don't have access to the resources that they don't have. Now, that doesn't mean that you never go there, you never try. It's just about, there is a level of self-preservation that I think is really essential for us. And I think that's one of the things that we have actually learned as a legacy of enslavement, is actually about being able to self-protect us. And one of those things that we're talking about is, don't talk about certain things because it's not safe for you to do that.
Yeah.
I think it's also who holds the power. It's also who holds the power of who holds the power, like, because you shouldn't go where you're not wanted anyway, and if you feel vulnerable, if you feel vulnerable, you shouldn't really go places where you're not really wanted, because as you said, Cashier, if you don't feel safe in going there, you shouldn't go there.
Yeah.
Okay, Liz, I think you had your hand up, but you've gone off camera now. So if you're still around, do you want to mute yourself? Because I think we've got Cash and Adriana for about another 3 minutes, but yeah, there we go. I'll unmute you. There we go.
Yeah, thank you, both of you. I don't know if the other lady's still here as well, but no, thank you for those responses there. Don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing is also part of, I think Abdul asked the question, it was Carl, who, what from slavery, no, it was you, Mark, what from slavery has persisted to prevent us from being well? And I saw it written down and I couldn't believe it, but it's something that is sort of like so obvious, that we were told in slavery, the white supremacists were told, never trust a black person. So it's not that we weren't trustworthy, it's that if you trust us, then we'll start to feel comfortable, we'll start to feel valued. And they've taught us the same thing, never trust each other. And I have to tell you that I worked in the NHS. So it was the NHS that tried to kill me, and it's the NHS that didn't care about my well-being or my mental well-being, my physical well-being, because the mental well-being came because of my I had meningitis and I had a physical disability, and then the physical disability was what caused me to end up being pushed around at work to the extent that I had a disability discrimination case against my employer after 34 years. And then all the places that I went afterwards, didn't want to talk about the disability, didn't want to reasonably adjust to my disability, my physical disability, and that ended up with me having invisible disabilities, i.e. depression and anxiety, and it actually pushed me to the brink, as Abdul was saying as well, that you think this can't be happening. Obviously, there's something wrong with me. You know, it's not them. It must be me. It's got to be me, because this has happened for the third time now in 3 years. It's got to be me. And it's only when I used the R word, because I'd had 34 years of putting up with a load of crap, and I said, I can't take working with this person anymore. This person is just so disrespectful to me, and it's racism.
Yeah.
And as soon as I said that R word, that was the end of my career. Because up till then, I'd put up with it. I kept quiet about it. I'd sucked it in, and I'd, you know, manned up, and all the other phrases that people throw at you when they're telling you to, you know, there's the young people that were on a Black History Month the other day talking about business, and I thought, oh my God, this is not the right place for me. And they said, oh, making yourself a victim of racism. I thought, we don't make ourselves victims.
It works for us.
We go on.
It for us.
Does it? Yeah. So the thing about the NHS and the health professionals is that we mustn't trust each other. And these nurses that mistreated, these midwives that mistreated me during my deliveries were literally trying to fit in, make good, in a sense that they were trying to fit in with white colleagues. Even though there weren't any white colleagues in the room, it's just me and them and my baby. They were like,
I do this a lot, Liz.
Why do you want pain? Huh?
So I do this a lot, and I apologise for talking across you, because we'll give you a chance to speak, but I know Cashin and Adriana are short on time, so.
Yeah, I mean, I thought we'd gone into the other session.
We have, yeah. I know it's a crossover point.
No, it's all right. I'm saying that so the crab in the barrel mentality of keeping each other down, and then the don't tell anybody your business makes you feel that you should keep it in and keep it to yourself. But you know, I think it can only harm us. And I thank you for listening, Adriana, because I trust my friends complicitly, but I don't want my managers or the health service or anybody else or any employee, the Labour Party or whatever it is, to think that they can get away with mistreating us anymore. And I've got absolutely nothing to lose. I've lost everything. So I've got absolutely nothing to lose. So I will not be silenced anymore. And I think that we should really have that courage to support each other, because what happened when I left was a young white woman, all the privilege, and also inverted commas, all the privilege inverted commas, but I think she was from a different class. She followed me in the job that I am going through court with now. And during the pandemic, she committed suicide. And nobody really wanted to talk about that when we were talking, because we thought, well, we were telling them this was going to happen. In all 4 of our cases, these 4 sisters that we stick together, and we had a lady do lunch thing yesterday, and they didn't want to hear it. But one of theirs couldn't cope. And instead of
I want to give you a big hug right now, Liz, because I know we've talked before.
I'm not happy. I said to the lawyers that that's the reason that I'm persisting, whether or not I win. And this is what we should remember, that we won't always win, that they must learn. And they never, like you said, Cash, said 2005. When you said 2005, I thought, oh my God, do you mean 2005 they knew this? I thought this was all post-Equality Act, 2010. And, you know, and Brother Nat and I met at the 2019 version in the House of Lords, and that's when, you know, racism.
I think I was there.
Yeah. Okay. Hey Liz, can I cut in and say something that, and I always want to say this, so this might be me just getting something off my chest, but you have kind of have obviously said something that's made me go back to it, and it's something that I realised working on all these helplines, which are mainly the callers are white. And obviously one of the things I really learned is that white people are not the people we think they are. They really aren't. And they're a lot of it is front.
They smile in your face all the time. They want to take your place. The backstab.
And the thing as well that really rang out, that I think that I took my whole life to learn up until that moment, was that I think that a lot of Black people consider it an injustice that we are not allowed to speak, and one of the things I think that doesn't cross our mind is that actually white people, they are not allowed to speak. The reason that they can't have a serious conversation often, the whole reason behind white fragility, the reason that they do well often, is because they can't speak, they don't speak, they're not allowed to speak, and the prison bars are very tightly put together for them, but they wear it differently, and because they're trained from very small to not show off, to shut up, you know, they really are. And I think that we just don't realize that. We think that somehow they are, all of them are in a position where they can say what they like, and I can tell you for a fact that they are not. They that white society, it seems really hard on us, it is really hard on us, but it's not like white people are allowed or encouraged to speak, because they are not.
I want to just to add something to you, and I guess it's just to reinforce and to validate what you're saying, Liz. The NHS has a history of doing exactly what you are saying, and if you go back 20, 30 years, it looked exactly the same. Their own reports have said they have, I think there was a report released just last year, I think it was, that was talking about how bad the NHS treats its Black staff. 20 years ago now, Roger Clyde, Snowy White Peaks did another report on the NHS and saying it treats Black people really badly. Their own reports are saying this. So the story that you're talking about has been replicated, certainly by lots and lots of people I know working in the NHS, who have had to, you know, use the phrase man up and suck it in and all those sorts of things in terms of simply survive there. And often one of the dynamics that happens is also when Black people within the NHS start to get together to talk, there is a real anxiety that's provoked within the leadership of the NHS, because suddenly people say, hold on a second, so it's happening to you and you're over in obstetrics, or you're in physio and you're in, you know, cardiac, but the pattern is exactly the same. So this can't be about you. It is about what the NHS, that's driven by an ideology that sees people who don't fit in, who are the outsider, it treats them in a particular way and produces those outcomes. It's not about individually bad people. The bad people can be most of the racists I know are very nice people, but actually they are part of a process. And I think that, because they are part of the process, but if they don't recognize that, they will continue to claim ignorance for what it is that happens. That it's as if they feel as if, you know, this would only happen if I had my hands on the wheel. You don't need anybody's hands on the wheel. The process works on its own. It's deeply embedded and it's producing exactly the outcome that it's designed to produce.
Totally agree. It's not coincidence, is it? But
how can it be coincidence for 50 years?
Exactly, yeah, and nothing's going to stop it unless we take the microphone and shout as loudly as we can, because one thing they like is being able to get away with it. The audience needs to be made aware.
I don't really know. I don't really know about that, Mark, because I think what I mean, this is only my personal position. The most liberating thing was when I decided that it wasn't my responsibility to make white people do the right thing. And I just needed to invest my energy into my community and actually be part of building things there, and not worry too much about being seduced into, you need to teach us, you need to make us do the right thing. And I don't see that that's my responsibility, and it's incredibly liberating.
Well, I think we said, again, like you said, everyone's got an opinion. My 80% of the problem is white people, 20% of the problem is us. Still holds water for me, because I see how our community is so divided, even though there's pockets of people, and I don't include myself in this because I'm fairly new to community work. I think that 20% of people is made up of an even smaller amount of the Black community. Not everyone is doing their fair share of the work. I think there's people I know that I'd want the police to take off the streets. I'm being brutally honest. There's people I wouldn't trust around my kids, my parents or friends. They've got the wrong attitude, but they are Black people. And in the same way, I know some Black people who've been really successful in life, and their success doesn't get championed enough. So we end up with this negative stereotype as though Black people don't achieve anything. I think we've seen 3 people tonight who have proven you can succeed in a field that's white dominated. You can be successful, and it just feels as though we're the 20% that we've got control over, we're not exploiting enough. So that lets the 80% of the white people who are racist make our situation continue for longer than it needs to. But I'll waffle all night if you give me the chance. We're going to switch to the after hours session now, and although we've talked about mental health for quite a lot, it's been really good to meet you, Adriana. We'll see you again, and have a good week, Cash. And
thank you for allowing me to come and meet you this week.
Yeah, me too. Yeah,
okay,
it's been great. Thank you, guys.
David, Huddersfield. Are you still in Huddersfield, David?
Me? Is it me?
Yeah.
No. I left over 30 years ago, so I live in London, but I'm often traveling, and I know your garage, Mr. Flowers.
I didn't expect that. That's what I asked.
No, but I am from Huddersfield, but I never planned to stay in London. It just happened. Life happened. I thought I was there for 3 years and come back north, and 30 years later, it just never happened. Yeah, but nice seeing you all, and
nice seeing you as well.
I will be in touch with Mark and Una, so I will. I'm sure our paths will cross again.
See you soon, I hope.
Corinne asking me to unmute. You see, we've switched on the mute function tonight, peeps. So if you do feel as though you want to speak, especially in the after hours sessions, I don't know if we can unmute permanently. I don't know if that's possible. So let's have a look.
Smart.
Hi, Corinne. How are you doing? Yeah, welcome. Kept you quiet all night, haven't we? That's not great.
Didn't you? I couldn't unmute. I couldn't say anything.
Let me try and unmute everybody then. So it's the after hours session. I think we know everybody in the space. Rika, you're an invite, and I know Cashin's made you aware of the space, but we have an after hours session, and it's a participation space. So if you could unmute at the very least, if Cashin's recommended you, I'm not going to question that, but if you could just unmute yourself so we can have a proper conversation, that'd be helpful. Otherwise, we will put you in the waiting room area and hope to see you next time round. Chris, I know you as well, so that's fine. Hi, Joy.
Hi.
Hello. Oh, I saw you put your hand up there, Rika. Let's see if I can unmute you. I'm going around everyone now trying to unmute you, but I'm not sure how successful I'll be. Hello, Yvonne. How are you?
I'm all right. Good evening, everybody. I'm just in time after hours. Seems like we had a full night.
Yeah, it's been good. Yeah, we ran over slightly. So, how's Yvonne?
Yvonne's not too bad. Yvonne's not too bad. I went out. Went to the cinema and did some social things.
Oh yeah.
But, such as my commitment, here I am in after hours.
Nice one. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm presuming it wasn't the James Bond film, but you never know.
No, I saw that last week, and no, it was Dune tonight. I'm a Bond fan. Yes.
Okay. Did you say Dune?
Yeah, I saw Dune tonight. D-U-N-E.
Okay. So you're going to do the Mark Kermode thing now and tell us whether a recommendation on 1 to 10, whether it's worth seeing. Good night. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, if you like sci-fi, nice moral story. I thought it was brilliant. Very long, but very good.
Is it a remake? 'Cause I've heard that name before. Is it Dune as in Dune?
I think it's very different from... I think there was an American comedy thing or something.
It's a book. It's a
book
that was written about 30 years ago.
Oh,
I can't remember the original author.
Frank Herbert.
That's right.
Yeah.